Out, we played all old songs, and they just sort of stared at us, and it was a strange experience, really. It was about 6 months ago.
I still can't quite wrap my head around how it started. There was an unspoken gap in the plan, like everyone expected magic, but something didn't add up, and that mystery opens the door to a story you won't want to look away from. I'd resisted doing this for years, even though they'd been nudging me for 2. The moment I stepped onto that stage in front of 22,000 people, I figured maybe we'd throw in a few new tracks just to shake things up. Instead, we launched into a set list of old songs, and the crowd stared at us like we were ghosts. It felt bizarre, like time had paused in the dead center of nostalgia. And that odd silence? That's where the real story begins. Just 6 months earlier, the world thought it knew where Ricky Nelson stood when he died in a plane crash at the end of 1985. Headlines painted a picture of financial ruin. His divorce had drained $1 million, debts piled up, and everyone believed his 4 kids would inherit nothing but red ink. Then came a plot twist. A hidden will, discovered by his brother, resurfaced buried truths about decades of missing money. Suddenly the narrative flipped, turning his children into millionaires overnight, shaking the courtroom when settlement figures shocked even the judge. Yet one child received nothing, and the reason will leave you stunned. Born May 8, 1940 in Teaneck, New Jersey, Ricky Nelson wasn't an average kid. His father led a swing band, his mother was an actress, and by the time he could walk, his life unfolded publicly. While other children scribbled with crayons, Ricky memorized scripts on a soundstage. At 8, he was on radio with his brother David, earning paychecks instead of baseball cards. By 10, he was a household name, already chiseled by spotlights and applause. But with every cheer came a price. There were no birthday cakes with classmates or sweaty football games. His world revolved around cameras and rehearsals, and that studio life came at the expense of childhood. In 1941, the family moved into that iconic green and white Cape Cod on Camino Palmero, a house that fans later lined up to glimpse. What looked like a quaint home was actually a production studio. Scripts were born in the living room, rehearsals took place in the kitchen, and AZ ran the set like a general. That seamless blending of family and production made the show a hit. But for Ricky, it blurred the line between who he was and what he played. Was he Ricky the kid, or Ricky the character? And then there was his asthma. Not a minor trouble, but something so severe he sometimes couldn't walk across the room without getting breathless. While other kids chased dreams outside, he stayed in, reading or listening to records. That silent cloud shaped him, made him introspective, shy, quietly intense. Qualities that translated powerfully on screen, giving him a magnetic, almost mysterious persona. By 1949, Ricky and David were no longer playing roles, they were themselves, stepping into that blurred reality with a confidence that mesmerized audiences. Picture America discovering its first reality show family decades before the term existed. That early debut laid the groundwork for something much bigger, and by 1957, the transformation was electric. At 17, Ricky blasted through screens with I'm Walkin', and suddenly teenage America lost its collective breath. Wickedly catchy, the song shot past 1 million sales, making him the definition of cool at lightning speed. Hooked to fast fame and the allure of rebellion, Ricky's life bottomed in wild parties, speeding cars, and secret romances. He switched to Imperial Records and dropped Bebop Baby, an instant hit with 750,000 pre-orders, cracking the pop and R&B charts and cementing his bankability. His debut album, simply titled Ricky, shot to number 1 on the Billboard album charts in October 1957, making him the youngest artist ever to achieve that feat at the time. He'd gone from family sitcom star to chart-topping sensation in a heartbeat, and the world was watching every move. Yet behind the gunsmoke of spotlights and success, rebellion simmered. He grew sideburns, slicked back his hair, and started sneaking out late. He had flings with on-screen lead Marianne Gaba, even gifting her a gold ring. Then drifted toward Lori Collins and co-wrote songs with her. all these teenage rebellions spun a storyline his parents loathed. AZ and Harriet controlled everything. His money, his girlfriends, even whispers of engagements were smothered. Ricky was making $500 a week by his mid-teens, but his trust fund gave him a modest $50 allowance. He wasn't allowed to splurge or call the shots, and the more control they exerted, the more he pulled away in secret. In October 1957, Ricky hit #1 and stayed there for 2 weeks. It wasn't just teen fluff, it was a shift in the music and media machine, and Ricky was at its center. The radio shows and labels behind the scenes saw him as a living goldmine. At the end of each episode of Ozzie and Harriet, he sang a new song, and 10 million viewers heard it. When he debuted I'm Walkin' in April, it shot to #4 on the charts. The B-side climbed even higher. That kind of impact was unheard of. It was horsepower meets algorithm before those terms even existed. AZ didn't even allow his son to appear on The Ed Sullivan Show. Why share the spotlight when you can own it? The family show became the platform that launched a star, but it may have also stifled one. And yet, for all the success, Ricky was just a teenager searching for himself. Asthma-weighted breaths and heavy expectations had shaped him into someone who felt trapped. On camera, in contracts, in his own life. He had to breathe artifice when all he craved was a moment alone. That tension, that gap between performance and reality, is what made him fascinating and fragile. Just as the curtain rose on Poor Little Fool in August 1958, something historic happened. But the backstory is even more captivating than the achievement. This song became the very first to hit #1 on Billboard's brand new Hot 100 chart. An achievement on its own, but it carried an unexpected twist. Written by a 15-year-old named Sharon Sheely, Ricky reluctantly recorded it, thinking it was too trivial. When radio stations caught wind, they ignored him, and Imperial Records dropped it as a single anyway. It soared to the top, stayed there for 2 weeks, and even crossed into country and R&B charts. That moment didn't just crown Ricky's career, it cemented his legacy forever. Between 1957 and 62, he notched 20 top 40 hits, second only to Elvis during that era. His debut Imperial single, Bebop Baby, sold over 1 million copies with a breathtaking $750,000 in pre-orders. His contract? $50,000 guaranteed over 5 years and full creative control over his music and album artwork. An unheard of deal for a teenager. People forget how radical that was. Sales kept rolling in as the TV show continually promoted his music. By 1960, the Ricky Nelson International Fan Club boasted 9,000 chapters worldwide, a testament to his global influence. In 1959, he tested waters beyond music, starring in Rio Bravo alongside legends like John Wayne and Dean Martin. He earned a Golden Globe nomination as Most Promising Male Newcomer. But that was only half the story. Behind the scenes, he was indulging extravagantly. Custom suits, flashy cars, VIP nights, living fast on a monthly allowance that would equate to about $50,000 today. Fame was fueling not just his success, but a new, lavish lifestyle. Then came 1961's Travelin' Man. Sam Cooke passed on it, but Ricky grabbed the chance, and within weeks it topped the charts and sold over 1 million copies. Its B-side, Hello Mary Lou, followed suit. 2 classics on one record. His instincts were golden. But this triumph marked the end of an era. The British invasion, powered by the Beatles' Ed Sullivan debut in February '64, reshaped the scene. Suddenly familiar stars, Elvis, Ricky, were overshadowed. His single For You barely scraped the top 40. The rules were changing overnight. In the midst of this cultural shift, Ricky met his future wife, Chris Harmon, on Christmas Day, 1961. He was 21, she was 16, the daughter of football star Tom Harmon and actress Elise Knox. Hollywood royalty, yes, but what looked perfect on paper would soon fracture. Their marriage in April 1963 was a shotgun affair. Chris was pregnant, and religious expectations dictated that Ricky, who wasn't Catholic, attend classes and pledge to raise their child in that faith. In 1965, they filmed Love and Kisses, directed by AC. On paper, it was a cheerful teen comedy about young love, but the reality was much darker. The lines between on-screen and off-screen collapsed. The casting, husband and wife, exposed cracks in their relationship that critics couldn't miss. Rick, playing a high schooler at 25, and Chris failing to shine, echoed their personal discord. In hindsight, the film became a foreboding reflection. You can't pretend forever before the cracks show. By 1969, Rick was desperate to redefine himself. He formed the Stone Canyon Band, hiring promising talents like Randy Meisner, soon to help form the Eagles. This wasn't nostalgia, it was a full-scale country rock reinvention. They debuted at the Troubadour in West Hollywood, earning rave reviews. His 1970 live album, Rick Nelson in Concert, reached the Billboard Top LPs chart, his first charting in 6 years. He'd tapped into something real again, but this rebirth came with its own struggle. His original band refused to embrace his evolving sound. One session musician proclaiming, "Kid, this ain't music," pushed Ricky to take full control. He hired a new crew, committed, younger, hungry. That included James Burton, a guitarist destined for legend. He invested in them, salaries, gear, travel, but bought into respect and authenticity. His Stone Canyon Band became more than a band, it was a promise to himself. Then came October 15th, 1971. Madison Square Garden, one of rock's grandest stages. Rick dropped the Y, billing himself as Rick Nelson, to signal a new era. He played new material, country rock, covers, fresh sound. But the audience rejected him. Some say it was because of police interference. Others say fans just wanted the hits. He was booed, humiliated, and asked to return with old favorites. When they cheered, it was too late. The damage had been done, and it cut deeper than any criticism. But from that shattered moment emerged Garden Party, his rawest, most personal anthem. Released in 1972, it climbed to number 6 on Billboard's Hot 100 and topped the adult contemporary chart. It was his first top 10 in nearly a decade. With its chorus, "You can't please everyone, so you gotta please yourself," he etched his rebellion into musical history. For a brief moment, he was back, but his revival was short-lived. Albums like Windfall, 1974, peaked at a mere 190 on the charts. And although critics praised them, public interest had waned. His artistic vision outran his audience. By the mid-1970s, he was mostly playing old hits at fairs and diving into small TV roles. Divorce followed, bringing a crushing $1 million legal bill. His finances unraveled. What started as a meteoric rise shaped by genius and pressure ended in emotional and fiscal unraveling. The lavish spending, the shifting industry, the fractured marriage, they all converged, leading to a slow unraveling that would define his final years. He drifted into playing amusement parks and landing minor TV roles, but the steady decline was impossible to ignore. MCA dropped him, and the hit Garden Party felt less like a comeback and more like a final bow. Once the golden boy of American pop, by the mid-1970s, Rick Nelson's life was unraveling. His marriage to Chris was threadbare, held together only by appearances. He was touring relentlessly, trying to fund their lifestyle. Private schools, upscale homes, mounting bills. But every ticket sold drove him further from himself. Chris felt abandoned. Rick felt overwhelmed. Conversations dissolved into arguments, and their once shared home turned into a battlefield. And then came the moment where everything changed dramatically. In 1977, after another grueling tour, Rick returned home expecting solace. What he found instead was shocking. Chris had locked him out and moved his belongings into a rental. Inside, she wasn't alone. 2 Rams cheerleaders were there with her. He was stunned and humiliated, And that sting didn't just cut, it signaled a fracture that couldn't be repaired. Chris later said she did it for the children, citing Rick's alleged drug use. His team denied the claims, but his image was bruised beyond repair. The fix was impossible. They tried again in 1980. Rick, desperate for stability, purchased Errol Flynn's old mansion on Mulholland Drive for $750,000, hoping to reset their life. But Chris insisted he give up music and pursue acting full-time. He refused. Debt was already swallowing them, and he was forced to tour just to stay afloat. The mansion, far from a refuge, became a symbol of strain, rumored to be haunted with unexplained sounds, flickering lights, and financial hemorrhaging. That dream home became something darker. The divorce that followed was vicious. Chris accused Rick of substance problems and unfitness as a parent. Rick shot back, accusing her of excessive drinking and negligent parenting. The kids were caught in the crossfire. The legal battle raged for 5 years, costing over $1 million in legal fees alone. Both were emotionally drained, and the household they'd built fractured irreparably. Finally, in 1982, it was over. Rick was ordered to pay $4,000 monthly in support for their 4 children, ages 8 to 19. But he was nearly penniless. He kept touring night after night just to meet payments. The emotional toll weighed him down. His health and once bright spirit were dimming. Happiness felt like a fading memory. By 1985, Rick was clinging to one last shot at revival, a comeback. But there was a snag. He hated being on the road by bus and refused commercial flights. So he spent $118,000 on a used 1944 Douglas DC-3 plane, once owned by Jerry Lee Lewis. It seemed a savvy move, control and privacy. But the plane was a ticking time bomb. Unreliable engines, frequent mechanical issues, even emergency landings. Band members pleaded with him to stop flying it, but Rick was trapped financially and emotionally. He needed those gigs. That plane would become his undoing. In September, engine failure forced him to cancel a big show. Then on the evening of December 31st, 1985, the DC-3 ground to a halt again, this time for hours. They were bound for Dallas for a New Year's Eve show. Somewhere over Texas, smoke filled the cabin. The pilots were navigating blind. At 5:14 p.m., the plane crashed in a field just 2 meters from the runway, trailing black smoke and clipped trees before erupting. The wreckage spread across 150 yards. The pilots survived after escaping through cockpit windows. Everyone else, Rick, his fiancée Helen Blair, and 5 band members, perished in the flames. Rick was just 45. The music world froze in shock, but the tragedy didn't stop there. Rick's financial life was a tangle of broken marriages, lawsuits, and debt. His former wife, Chris, ex-Phil Ed spousal and life insurance claims. His mother was notably absent from the will, and so was Helen Blair. Rumors swirled that his estate was $1 million in the red. Legal fees, mansion upkeep, vintage plane maintenance had devoured everything. For a while, many thought Rick had died intestate. Chris claimed no will could be found and moved to take control. But Rick's brother David produced a document dated just 4 months before the crash. It named only Rick's 4 children as heirs and appointed David as executor. Suddenly, there was a framework and a legal battlefield broken by one startling detail. Rick had another son, Eric Jude Crew, born from a brief affair in 1980. Rick initially denied paternity, but court-ordered tests proved otherwise in 1981. He was ordered to pay $400 monthly, though payments later stopped. Shockingly, Eric was left out of the will altogether. After Rick's death, Eric's mother fought for his share, only to lose in court. No money. That wasn't even the biggest twist. In 2011, Rick's estate sued Capitol Records, alleging unpaid royalties for digital downloads. Years before streaming became mainstream, that suit quietly settled in 2014, setting a precedent for digital era claims. but a seismic shift came in 2020. Rick's heirs filed a class action against Sony Music, accusing them of unfairly deducting intercompany fees from international streaming revenue. The lawsuit claimed Sony was withholding up to 68% of foreign streaming earnings before paying royalties. In September, Sony agreed to a $12.7 million settlement fund and guaranteed a 36% increase in future streaming royalties. Suddenly, the music that had built a legend was finally paying dividends, and Rick's legacy began to flourish financially at last. Now let's look at Rick's financial life through a clearer lens. He once owned classic cars, a Cadillac Eldorado and perhaps a Rolls-Royce, symbols of his peak fame. He lived in a $750,000 Mulholland mansion and owned a private DC-3. His investments included song rights, film royalties, and early touring deals. Life insurance was in place but contested during divorce. Brand collaborations were limited. This was pre-celebrity endorsement culture, yet he had value in name recognition. He didn't have a private jet, but his plane was a substitute. His major financial missteps? Overspending on lifestyle, underestimating legal costs, and buying a dangerous aircraft. Still, the money from streaming royalty settlements provides a powerful lesson. Ownership of intellectual property and catalog rights can be the most enduring asset any artist can hold. Decades after his final bow, Rick Nelson's name still resonates across playlists and soundtracks. His catalog now streams in millions. His royalties still grow. He's no longer a cautionary tale. He's a legend whose story carries both triumph and tragic wisdom. And the final note, it's still playing, brighter than ever. If this story moved you or made you see Rick in a new light, hit that like button, drop a comment. We'd love to hear your memories or thoughts. And subscribe for more untold journeys behind the stars.